I want to talk for a moment about the person sitting here speaking to you as a teacher who has just taught you or sat with you through a class, and all of those of you who know me as this, as opposed to the person Blanche lives with all week long. And there's a difference. And if you guys lived with me all week long, you might not be sitting here in this class, and I wouldn't blame you. And I want, if I can, for myself and for you, to try to humanize what is a very strange dichotomy of being a teacher and being a human being who is learning and teaching what one is learning. There are teachers who I believe come to us as PhDs, as perhaps even Nobel laureates, who have learned whatever there is to be learned, who have mastered whatever it is they set out to master, and can try to, in a way, teach what they've learned. And everyone teaches from a different level, but imagine a Nobel laureate in subatomic physics talking to a first grade class. And try to imagine how that talk has to be reconfigured in so many ways for the first graders. Imagine even talking to a 10th grade class or college PhD candidates. It's the same talk, it's just altered in some way. And this teacher who knows so much about subatomic physics goes home at night and has to deal with an aging parent, the need for a new furnace, the reality of the grandchildren staying at your house for 5 days while their children go look for a house somewhere else where you may move. And I'm just putting out hypotheticals, which happen to be striking a chord with me. But imagine how the subatomic physics Nobel laureate deals with grandchildren who wake you up at 5 in the morning when you've just gone to bed 6 hours before or 5 hours before. Imagine I can go on. I mean, I'm trying to present a vague picture, which is not exactly my picture, but let me get closer to my picture. I'm not a Nobel laureate, but I have been sitting teaching meditation, a kind of a spiritual view of the world, for half a century. I have gone through enormous lessons of being exposed to the world on so many levels. I've experienced a Hollywood career in which, to my benefit as a writer, my ego was hacked to pieces and served me very well. If people don't know what I mean, basically, every script you write goes through a process of transformation by people who don't know what they're talking about. And you have to go on that journey with them as your heart and soul are ripped to shreds. And it's a really powerful experience because you do everything you can to hold on to whatever ultimate purity you might be able to find in the middle of that. So I've done that with 30 scripts or more. I've raised children with my wife. I have taught classes for somewhere near 40 years. And I have watched all of this journey as it unfolds. I had this remarkable experience 10 years ago after sitting literally every day of my life trying to be a good student, to meditate, finding through the meditation a kind of what I call navigational system that steered me through various turbulent times and waters, and did so very effectively. So I'm very grateful for that. I have been provided with wonderful spaces in which to live and teach. And at the same time, there are all kinds of struggles that go on. They are private, personal, there are social, they are political, there are environmental. There are all these things that go on. It is a complex environment that we all inhabit. And sometimes the day-to-day struggle challenges the Nobel laureate or the spiritual teacher. And I don't think it makes you less of a Nobel laureate or less of a spiritual teacher. It just means the human being journeys through this miasma of universal experience and tries to transmute it, if you will, into something that elevates, that provides clarity, that provides insight and maybe wisdom about how to live. And that is something that I've been doing for a long time. There are periods of smooth sailing, and there are periods of enormous upheaval and storm clouds and rockiness. And I know those of you who've been listening to my talks in the last however long it's been, I can call it the Trump years if you want, but somewhere in all of this, the journey has gotten more testy. The awakened being that occurred 10 years ago, who thought it had all the answers, is discovering that there are answers for the individual ego-minded journey, and there are answers that still come to this more universal journey that we are all on, whether you are perceiving it directly through your two little narrow eyes or through a much more wide open vision. It's still the journey. It's a big, big journey. And I have been learning day by day how much I yet have to learn in the journey. And one of the extraordinary things about this spiritual journey is that it happens inside a body that is transforming all the time. It is changing all the time, and it is becoming, in a certain sense, less and less inhabitable. And you may not have gotten to that place yet, but you will. It won't work for you the way it worked before. It won't be as responsive. It won't be as able to recollect thoughts, ideas, names, words, places, memories. You may find that your physical energy is different, that the thing that you set upon as your path to make you strong and healthy, suddenly there's a weak spot like in your ankle, and you can't walk the way you walked that kept you vibrant. Things happen all the time. And so your physical universe in many ways impacts your spiritual unfolding. And I will tell you from experience that if you're on a committed spiritual journey, you will find a way to work with this transformative aspect of everything around you changing and everything within you changing, so that all of the rules, all of the laws, all of the expectations that were there are no longer operative. You are not the person that you were. You are not the person who set out on this journey. You don't have the same skill set. You don't have the same mindset. You are different, and everything is different, except if there is a hunger for, need for, or an inner calling into this wiser, more perceptive state of being, you will find your way there. It's about the muscle. Rudy always talked about that. If you create the muscle of growing, that's what he called it, the muscle of connectivity to your journey, to your spiritual unfolding, no matter what goes on during the day, it becomes food for, fodder for, transformative, expansive, uplifting experience or spiritual unfolding. I keep fighting against this idea of mastery, of spiritual mastery. I don't claim that it's not possible. And I suspect there are people out there who have maybe done it. But I will call it a rarefied achievement. You may be looking for spiritual, absolute awakening and purity and undisturbable bliss. And you may find it, and you may even find it through this practice. But what I think I'm trying to say to you is that day to day, this journey has challenges, and it requires practice and effort and constancy. And it really is something that will inform you, instruct you, uplift you, and bring you in some way the wisdom that you seek. Whether it brings you absolute bliss and absolute purity, I wish you well. I really do. For me, as I travel on this road, I see something else emerging. I see capacity. I see challenge. I see the bigness of this is so beyond anything I have ever imagined, ever grasped, ever witnessed, that all of my knowledge base is essentially going out the window. The challenge of that is so enormous. I think a lot of you know I'm a member of the Motion Picture Academy, and I've probably talked about this. They send me all these movies to watch for the nominations, which I have to do tomorrow. Also for the Directors Guild and the Writers Guild, which have already happened. I'm obligated on some level to watch all these movies. I must tell you quite honestly, it's getting harder and harder to do. And it's getting harder to do because I no longer fully trust the human journey or the human narrative. I think most of us have been fed a bill of goods. I've talked about this before, but I really believe that the happy ending is a Hollywood creation, that it's not about happy endings, that life goes on. I think human suffering is a real thing, and I think occasionally in great movies and in great literature and in great poetry, people get to the heart of what suffering and grief and loss and difficulty mean. for me, great storytelling tells me that even the worst of human suffering magnifies the miracle of human being at all. The very fact of existence, the very fact that we have mind, body, spirit functioning in a materialized space is beyond understanding. Literally beyond understanding. But as we start to lose it, if we lose a child, if we lose a parent, if we lose something that we love, the grief and the sadness and the pain of that is unbearable. But the journey through that unbearableness opens us up to something that makes us aware, even this I would endure for life itself. Some people can't endure it. Some people cannot endure it. The loss, the pain, the suffering, the inability to break out of the bonds of a deteriorating mind, a deteriorating body, a world around you that seems to be going crazy. All of these things for some people are unendurable. But for people who move through these things, the story value that comes out of great literature is that through that effort and endurance, one finds this unbelievable and undeniable fact that they love life. That they love life. It is not necessarily a Hollywood ending. It is an arrival at a kind of exquisite truth. And then the great betrayer, that life is going to be taken away. The thing you love is going to be methodically, slowly, perhaps, maybe over in the course of a second, but it's going to be taken away, and you will see it go. The difference between a spiritual life and a material life is that the materialist thinks when it goes, black out. The spiritual life tells you when it goes, it's the beginning of something greater. A spiritual life can prepare you for the loss of the material life. By finding these places inside yourself, when you are going through the day-to-day drama of existence, by finding the muscle that can take you into these places of exquisite agreement with the what is. When you go into these places and you begin to develop a sense of residence, a sense of knowing, a sense of affirmation that there's something vibrant and vital living in you that is somewhat beyond the material. When the material gets taken away, all of that effort may prove to have been very worth it. I say may because I don't want to do anything that's definitive, because I don't know definitively anything. But my experience is, as one maintains a connection to this inner self, one has, as a result, an ability to travel through the miasma of spiritual and material upheaval that is inevitable in your life. Here's an interesting thing. Poor Blanche has had to deal with me in upheaval for the last week. I often think she is the source of my upheaval. She thinks I'm the source. We're probably both the source. We both get on each other's nerves for millions of reasons that have to do with the fact that we're getting older. She can't hear me, I can't hear her. She says one thing, she says, I'll be there in a minute, half an hour goes by. You know, I get angry that half an hour goes by when in fact come on already, you know half an hour is going to happen, and don't get caught up in it. And then we sit and we have dinner, and it's so sweet, and we're just together. We go on the treadmill and the bicycle together, and we watch the news together, we talk, we read the newspaper together. We have these exquisitely sweet moments, but the other part operates as well. And it gets to be like our relationship has struggle and it has peace and sweetness. It has both. It is a polarity and it is a totality. And those totalities are what we deal with in life. They are a core of what we deal with in this world. One thing Blanche says to me a lot, and let me throw this out at you. She said, you know, it would really help if you would listen to some of your own talks. So the other night, I'm waiting for her, and 45 minutes have gone on, and she was going to go away. She'd be back in a minute. So I take out one of my talks, and I just turn it on, and I go, huh. It totally changed the atmosphere. I did not get angry at Blanche when she was 45 minutes late. I just went, I'm going to bed, honey. I love you. I was totally calmed out by my own teaching, my own voice, and I realized, one, it's not my voice. It's not me. It's something that comes through me in the same exact way that it would come through you. And that I am as much a teacher to Bruce as Bruce is a teacher to you. We are all, I suppose, beneficiaries, assuming you think of this as beneficial. And I was very calmed by it and very grateful. This talk is like 363 or 4 of the number of talks that I put on YouTube. In 2 more talks, I will have given a year's worth of talks. Something about that feels climactic, like I've done it. For whoever survives me, you got 1 talk a day for as long as you live. For each year, you could go through the whole cycle and get a talk, assuming they will mean anything to you. All I can tell you is it meant something to me to listen to these words, because they are words that have come through a channel that has been dug over the course of half of a century, and that has allowed this stuff to come through. And when it comes through, Bruce gets to be a beneficiary of it, just like anybody else. The reason I love Sunday mornings so much, 2 reasons. One, I love each of you. I love you. You have no idea how much love is at the core of this experience. I treasure your presence. And I get to be the first person to hear what's being spoken as it comes through. And so it speaks to me in the same way that it speaks to you. This me that I am, which I thought in some ways had evaporated 10 years ago into total awakening and realization and enlightenment. Not that that wasn't true, not that it's actually gone away. It's just, I am now something that includes, again, the shorthand, Donald Trump. That includes the fact that our planet and the world we live in and inhabit is in danger. I am a Bruce that feels unbelievable concern for my fellow human beings, for every tree, for every drop of water and every fish, for every turtle. I am a Bruce now that inhabits a sphere that is vast and also gets very reduced down to looking for a house. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to put my body and my wife in the months to come, because we're obviously going to be somewhere else? How do I find where I belong? And what I've begun to understand is what I'm looking for is as much comfort as I can find for a body that in fact is deteriorating. and getting smaller and weaker and less able to support this life that's going on. And the obsession I feel with finding where I'm going to be next has overtaken me in ways that I never have witnessed before. I never was a person who obsessed about the house. I've been living in Los Angeles for 38 years. If I did obsess, it's been a long time. Now there's this thing about where will I land? What will be safe? And this growing realization that there's no perfect, and that I, Bruce, have got to learn to adapt to what is. Period. I do not know what will arise. I don't know what will happen. I don't know where exactly I will land, but I know that whatever it is, this is preparation for the end. At my age, and I may go long, or I may go another 10 or 20 years, I really don't know. I think I mentioned on a talk that a psychic said I was going to go 30 years. So, to 105, I cannot fathom that. But the journey right now is into where do I come down? Where do I land? How do I find this safe haven, and the knowing in the biological sense that ultimately I will fail on every level, because nothing will be right, because it's all going away. It's all going away. If I move into a much smaller house, Blanche and I have collected artworks over the years that are big wall paintings in 2 houses. If we move into a much smaller home, I have to give all of that away. I have to give the Buddhist artworks away. All these things that have been collected. And then you ask yourself, so why have I been collecting? Why have I gathered all this stuff if I only in the end have to give it away? And of course the answer that came back to me, well, you always knew this. You've always known you're going to have to give it away. And I kept thinking, well, my kids will have space for it, but actually they don't. And there's this sense of losing the things you love. But I will tell you, as this is not the height of spiritual teaching, you are going to lose everything you love. And not only are you going to lose it, you're going to give it away. And there's going to be huge transformation. And the instinct to hold that is going to bring you shame and embarrassment, especially if you're a Buddhist teacher. But Rudy always talked about the Zen monk who kills another Zen monk for stepping on his flower. I always found that really interesting. This idea that we obsess ultimately about tiny little stupid things, but we do. So, what I'm trying to share with you is there's a spiritual teaching that is coming through that has validity, that can inform you, that can help prepare you for the rest of your life, and tell you the things that you may already know, that you're going to lose everything. That the idea of happy endings, the idea of grief and suffering are all kind of storytelling devices, basically trying to show you that underneath it all, you love this life you're going to leave. The grief of leaving it and the sadness are the very doorways into the thing that shows you how much you love it. And how much you love life is the thing, I believe, that goes with you to the next grave, through the grave. How much you love life. The end of Ghost is the love inside, you take it with you. Probably the best line that got written in anything I've done. The love inside, you take it with you. And trust me, you love this. You love this. Your entire drama, your entire world view is shaped by this undercurrent of you love it. Even people jumping off of bridges as they're heading to the water are realizing, oh my God, I loved it. So, I guess you're hearing the teacher. All week long, Blanche hears Bruce. Bruce is trying to live the lessons of the teaching. And if he wasn't, he probably couldn't sit here and share with you the evolving teaching and wisdom of watching what it means to be Bruce in the world. There are true fundamental elements that go into this Bruce guy, just like there are true fundamental elements that go into you. They are bedrock, they are not meant to be and cannot be changed. They are what you are. I come out of a family, if you could meet them, of the most anxiety-ridden human beings you have ever met on the planet. My grandfather at the age of 100 would call his daughter, Clara, to see that she made it home. She was 90. Not 90, whatever she was, 80 something. My mother and father were in endless anxiety mode. I have that reality, but it is part of the whole. My poor wife has to deal with it more than you do. You get to see one side of it on a regular basis. I tell you there are more than one side, and I share that with you because it is your ticket out of this teaching. If you want to go study with somebody who's got it all together and is totally pure, I say, please go. Find that person. If you want to study here, put yourself in Blanche's shoes and understand this is an imperfect teacher who has been given, if you will, a kind of something approaching a perfect teaching, which is that I don't know anything at all. And that not knowing is a holy place to live. Thank you for coming. Any questions?
Should we be working with you while you're giving your talk?
I'll tell you what used to happen for me with Rudy when he talked. It was my best class because I didn't work. I just sat there. The trying part of meditation is a complicated thing because it has to invest the ego with wanting something to make it better, and then at some point get it to the point where it can literally hand itself over to something else, saying, look, this is the best I can do, it's yours, and let it go, or have it be taken away on some level. The idea of sitting still during the talk and just letting it do what it wants to do, there's nobody home trying to process it. There's nobody home trying to have it be used for something of gain, to make me better, to make me whatever. It just flows through. And I really do appreciate that, letting it flow through. I mean, I loved sitting with Rudy without working, when I didn't work, but I always felt guilty. So I worked during the class, and then during the talks, I just was quiet. Working, here's the thing about a spiritual practice. If you don't do it, you will have no structure or ability to hold things together when it gets really rough. You just won't. You know, you cannot run a marathon if you have not walked around the block. You can't. When life becomes a marathon, and it will, as we get older, you have less and less capacity and more demand, and everything that you knew and loved is shifting and evaporating or whatever. Boy, do you need your center. Do you need your ability to go just like that? And that takes, for me, 50 years of sitting, you know, just training and going, okay. And even then, it falls away. But what happens is Blanche comes and says, you should listen to your own talks. And you find the talk, and it puts you right back again. You know, grace comes over and over. In a community of drought, we have rain, you know, and it's not a bad thing. We think rain, oh, it's all discomforting and it's uncomfortable. And we go through a lot of things that we don't like. In fact, it's grace, you know. my whatever obsessiveness about finding a new house looks bad from the outside and maybe even from the inside, but I know the drama of it has within it a grace. Because as Blanche tells me, and my mother used to tell me, it'll all work out. I don't know why I have to go through my drama, but I was born to that. And it's not easy to live with. Yet when I sit down and share with you all of this stuff, there's an underlying truth to it that might be helpful to somebody who will ultimately go through what I am expressing, which I think is maybe everybody. You know, we all are going to go through this upheaval of identity, of everything. New house, new person, new families. I mean, it's beyond belief how much it changes toward the end when you're at the weakest of spaces. Some people have great grace in that moment and some people don't. I'd say if you sit here and work during that talk, you may miss everything I said. That's okay. Rudy used to often say, don't try to hold on to anything. Anything that gets said that you need to hear will come back when you need to hear it. I believe that. I hear stuff from Rudy all the time that he said 50 years ago that still goes, oh, it just comes out of nowhere. So that will happen. But the reality is there's a part of you that works and there's a part of you that doesn't work, and they work together. So sit quietly, let it wash over you, let it move through you, let it just go over your head. It kind of doesn't matter. The environmental impact, the larger gestalt of it, will find its way to where it needs to go. Anybody else?
I wanted to bookmark something because I felt like something clicked during your talk when you said we actually love everything. And I'm so used to like loving particular things, but I got like a deeper place of just loving nothing, or loving
life.
And so I could like feel it. So I just wanted to bookmark that.
No, it's beautiful. You know, I mean, people say God is love, that the ultimate is love.
Yeah.
And grief is the loss of, or the disappearance of, or the not connected to love. It's an underlying truth. And I look at my grandchildren, they can't give words to this either, really, but you can see the love. You can see it, you can feel the love. That often adults have they haven't found their way back to that. It's loving this thing or that, under these conditions in this way. And if it's not like that, I don't love it. Bullshit. You take it away, you'll discover that underlying current is so potent, and it's connected to these things which I mention every week now, like goodness, beauty, truth. There's these things that we are, it's the core essence of what we are. And only when they take everything away that you have identified with as the source of love, that you discover, no, that was the reflection of love. The flowers were the reflection, they are not the source. The people you love around you are the reflection, they are not the source. And if you can't imagine, cut away the people you love, have them die in a car accident, and you think love is gone. And then the few people I've met who've gone through that, who really have gone on the journey, they go back to this place where they realize that that was the reflection of an essential reality. It's a hard place to get to, and only the people who really work at it, or who have been forced to work at it, tend to get there. And even in the journey from this life into the next life, assuming it goes on, the journey is that lesson taking place in the last minutes or the last hours or in the milliseconds after you die, that suddenly stretch out into what the Buddhists called bardo state, where you have to learn everything that we're talking about here in those milliseconds that suddenly appear like billions of years. This is the time to learn it. This is what we do. We sit still now to find that space, so when it reveals itself at the most unbelievably important moment of our life, we can go, yes. Instead of, oh, you know, what was that? Why didn't I see it before? Or whatever the guilt is that people go through in leaving this world. No, you just go, thank you. it's worth 50 years or 75 years or whatever of effort, even failed effort, even egoistic absurdities, to find your way into that incredible state that has always been. So when it reveals itself with nothing else around it, like a body, or smell, or sight, or sound, or people, you go, "Ah," because it's so pure. And in a way, you touch it every night. You touch it every night in sleep, where it dissolves into nothing. But imagine that happening, instead of in the darkness of deep sleep, in the brightness of awakening. It's as calming and as absorbing and as beautiful as deep sleep, only it's wide awake. And there's no you waking to it. It is awake itself. Awakening. That's the journey, you know, or not. I'll leave you with the with the negative of that. Maybe it's all bullshit. But if it is, it's still a better ride, reaching for it, than not. And also because I get to taste it at least part of my day, my coffee, my peanut butter sandwich in breakfast. I'm telling you, it is heaven on earth. Heaven on earth. That's all I know. My grandchildren, they wake me up. Waking up my grandson's, I jump up, you know, and I don't know where I am, who he is, and then suddenly I go, it's my grandson. And it's like, oh, you know, and even if I've only gotten 5 hours sleep, it's like, oh, you know, I mean, and you know, and my granddaughter, I mean, anyway, these are the things I have to let go of yet, but they are sources of love, and you are sources of love. And this, I could talk for 10 more hours, but I won't, about how much I love the fact that you are open entities to this dialogue, because the universe has created this enormity of being for people to witness what it is, to witness itself. And you are doing that directly. This is a gift that is direct appreciation of the very source of being that wants nothing more than to be witnessed and acknowledged and ultimately re-entered. Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll be here next week. Lots going on. I'll keep you in the mix. Thank you.